Triangle pose, Trikonasana, my own variation. Step the feet wide to a comfortable distance. And that distance does not have to be especially wide. I don't think it's necessary to go beyond the length of one of your own legs apart for the feet. And it will be perfectly fine to take an even narrower stance. The point of this variation is not flexibility, at least not in a max sort of way. It is to have strength at your own individual end range of motion. Now, with your feet wide, turn your right toes to face the front of your mat. You might notice that your hips begin to turn a little bit with that leg when you rotate it, and that is perfectly fine. The anatomy of the hip joints is such that having a perfectly parallel pelvis to the long edge of your mat is going to be physically impossible for 99% of human beings. So if the pelvis rotates a little bit towards the front, that's perfectly fine. We're not turning the pelvis towards the front. That would be a different pose, but allow the pelvis to settle in sort of a middle position, and that is fine. Now unlock the front knee a little bit just so there's a micro bend. You should almost not be able to tell if somebody were looking and they were trying to determine whether or not your knee was, quote, micro bent. They might have a hard time if they were simply observing, but you know that you bent the knee just a little bit. And along with that comes a digging of the front heel into the floor and a dragging, an isometric contraction of the hamstrings as though you were trying to draw your front heel back towards the back leg. With the legs having a strong foundation rooted to the floor, we can begin our descent into the pose. Now, this version of the pose will not involve any lateral bending or side bending or lateral flexion, whatever you want to call it, of the spine. We are going to maintain a perfectly neutral spine in this pose, the point of which is to strengthen your side body, your oblique musculature, in order to develop strength in the pose rather than maximum flexibility. So take your hands to heart center and extend up through the crown of the head, lifting and becoming long through the spine. Maintain the natural curvature of the spine, whatever that means for you. So don't worry too much about tilting or tucking or any of that in the pelvis. Just become long and lift through the heart, tuck your chin. And as you begin to gently lean over the front leg, you'll allow that front hip to hinge back and down. And the spine does not bend, so don't bend to the side. Simply allow the tower of the spine to lean until you can't go any further because you feel a stretch on the inside of the front leg and the back of the front leg. Once you feel that stretch, you've gone as far as your hip joint and hamstrings and inner thigh musculature allow. So if you are used to trying to touch the floor in your triangle pose and all that, just realize all of that range of motion is coming from your spine compensating rather than your front hip actually allowing for that motion. It's not good or bad necessarily. It's just that we sometimes deceive ourselves into forcing the goal of extreme flexibility. Now, this is the pose. You can hold it for as long as you feel comfortable. You can, of course, add different arm variations, like reaching the arms straight overhead would be very difficult to hold for a long time, and it would really strengthen your obliques and your spinal musculature. So go ahead, and when you're done with this pose, you'll wait for a breath in, and when you find it, you'll inhale to come back to neutral. And however you fit this into your class, whether that's stepping the feet back together and moving on to a new pose or some other transition, that is your choice. Thank you for watching.